Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Long time no talk. I know it's been a few months. I have still been active on my Instagram, so if you want to see book recommendations and book reviews, they are over there. However, I do want to get back to filming on my YouTube channel. Over the last few months, I've literally been everywhere and anywhere. I've spent almost the last 2 months in Europe. I was visiting friends in London. I hiked the Tour de Mont Blanc by myself. My mom and I traveled a month through Greece, Croatia, and Italy, so I was kind of doing all that. I was visiting friends in New York in early June for a wedding, which was really fun. I've just kind of been like everywhere and anywhere and not really in Vancouver, so I haven't been editing videos. I have filmed some vlogs from the trip, so I do really want to get around to editing those, as well as like recapping some of the books I've read, because I've been reading a lot this year. I think I'm like 10 books ahead of schedule of my reading goal, which is pretty good. Today we're going to be talking about my August TBR. I will do a June-July recap for sure because there's so many great books I've read during the summer months. Today we're going to focus on August, and August is Women in Translation Month. I love reading translated fiction. It is one of my favorite things in the entire world. I so strongly believe in diversifying your reading and reading from all around the globe, all different cultures and languages and people, particularly from female authors. I always post a pretty expansive women in translation recommendation list and TBR on my Instagram and TikTok, so that's where you can find most of that. Today we're just going to be going through this specific physical TBR. I would just like to read my women in translation caption that I post every single year, so I said I will reiterate what I say every year as it continues to resonate with me deeply. I love women's stories and translated literature, making Women in Translation Month one of my favorite reading themes to champion and celebrate. And then I have this quote from Parasite director when they won a Golden Globe. Once you overcome the 1-inch tall barrier of subtitles, you will be introduced to so many more amazing films. I think about this a lot in terms of literature as well. There are so many stories out there that deserve to be heard from all languages, cultures, and people on a whole. We need translated fiction, and even more so we need translated fiction from female authors. I encourage everyone to diversify their reading and challenge you all to learn and read the stories from women around the globe. So, I'm very passionate about this topic. I love reading from around the globe. This month, I have a pretty big stack of books on my physical TBR that I really want to get to. My reading recap, which I will do for June and July, also features, particularly July, I think it was all translated fiction by women, except for one book. You might see a few of them over on the shelf. I also got a new shelf because I have so many books and it's already getting filled up quite immensely. So without further ado, I would like to hop into my TBR for this month. So the first book I have on my physical TBR is from South Korea. It is from an author I have read before and absolutely loved, and it is Human Acts by Kang. So this has been on my TBR for a really long time. I picked it up in May, right before I left for Europe for a few months. This has been a book I wanted to read a long time. It's set in South Korea in 1980. It says, in the wake of a viciously suppressed student uprising, a boy searches for his friend's corpse, a consciousness searches for its abandoned body, and a brutalized country searches for a voice. This is a riveting and poetic examination of humanity at its most appalling and its most hopeful. One of the themes I have during this Women in Translation, so there are a few like more summary reads, but there's also here a lot about human history, specifically in these various countries that we might not have learned about as much in Canadian studies in schools in Canada. So my goal is to become more educated, as well as have some summaries in here as well. So I'm not as familiar with the background in South Korea. This is really informative. 76 pages in and thoroughly enjoying it. So that's my first book for this month. The next book I have is a more summary read. This is from a new country. This is set in Finland, and it is the summer book. This is from the New York Review of Books Press publisher. This is set on a small island in Finland, and it's about a 6-year-old girl and her grandmother, and it says this is set in 22 crystalline vignettes during summer, and it says the work can be enjoyed as her closely observed journal of the sound, sights, and the feel of a summer spent in intimate contact with the natural world. This is a pretty short read. I've heard really beautiful things about it. A lot of my mutual friends have enjoyed it, and I would love to just read this now that I'm home, read this by the ocean. I've never been disappointed in my collection of the New York Review books, so I'm excited to get to this one. So those first two books I purchased in May, right before I left. The next two books I have, I thrifted when I was in New York, actually, from Strand Books in very early June. I love being able to thrift books that are in impeccable condition and also find books from authors that I wanted to read maybe one of their other books, but instead I picked up a lesser known work because it was used and I was interested in it. So first book I have here from New York is from Haiti. I originally wanted to read a book called Cece by this author, but I saw this one on the shelf and it said it was signed, so I figured I might as well pick it up, and it is called Blue by Amélie Prophet, who is a Haitian author like I previously mentioned. And the little back blurb says, during a stopover in Miami, a young Haitian traveler scrolls through the lives of three women, those of her mother and her sisters, made up of servitude, of exile, and of forgetting. They stood up, she can testify, blue is the fierce heritage of any black woman. This sounds very beautifully written. It says, blue comes alive through vivid images crowding the page just as memories do in real life, as if the author is trying to sort through them to come to grips with her own emotional conflict. Balancing the pain and anger are spiritual bonds that connect the author to the women who have come before her, who have created her, and with Haiti itself, her motherland. No amount of glittering opportunity up north can prevent her from finding her way home. So I thought this just sounded really beautiful. The cover is absolutely stunning, and a bonus, it's signed. So I don't actually think it's used. I think it was just discounted. She's so beautiful. I can't wait to get to that. I don't know if I mentioned, but for Haiti, I had previously read from a male author a couple months ago, actually, a short story collection, but never read from a female author from Haiti, so I was really keen to get to that. And then similarly with this other book I picked up at the Strand, it is from a country that I have read from a male author, but never from a female author. And this book has been on my TBR for a long time, so I was very thrilled to find a used copy, and it is The Trio by Joanna Hedman. So this is from Sweden. We're circling back to, I guess, the Scandinavian summer theme here. The little blurb on the back says, the trio is the love child of Normal People and Brideshead Revisited. A sublime meditation on intimacy, freedom, and jealousy. It explores the gulf between our interior lives and the personas we perform, and between ourselves and other people. Joanna's writing is vivid, effortless, and staggeringly beautiful. This is an unlikely trio from a different world, and they are drawn together during 2 summers in Stockholm, and then years later when they're estranged, they're visited by each other, or from a daughter of one of them. And this goes from Sweden to Paris to Berlin to Brighton, and it's an unforgettable love triangle and an instant classic. So I've been wanting to actually read this for years. I just couldn't really ever find a copy in Canada that wasn't exorbitantly expensive, so I'm very, very, very excited to get to this one. The next book I have, I actually got for free from a random bookstore in Vancouver. They had a free stack of old ARCs that they were giving away, and so I picked this up because I knew the author. I had not read the author originally when I bought this. I have read one book from her now, and this book is from a Brazilian author you may have heard of, Clarice Lispector, and it is The Besieged City. So this is actually written when she was in Switzerland when her diplomat husband was posted in 1948. It is a book, it says it's a book unlike any other in the Lispector canon, a novel about simply seeing the external world. Its heroine is utterly mute and unreflective. She may have no inner life. It is a small town gal, marries rich man, sees the world, and lives happily ever after. I have read, where is it? The Apprenticeship or the Book of Pleasures by her previously. That's the only one I've read. I do really want to get to Near to the Wild Heart and that series from her. There's like 4 books. It has the face of the woman on it. But I'm trying to take down my physical TBR first, hence why we are going to read this. I don't know as many people who have read this one from her. I'm very intrigued to get to it and get another book off my physical TBR. So from Brazil, we have that. So the next book I actually picked up off of eBay several months ago in preparation for this reading month. And it's a book I've wanted to read a long time, but I was very particular about the cover and the edition I wanted because I don't love the newer editions as much. And it is from Mauritius, and it is Eve Out of Her Ruins by Ananda Devi. And so on the back, the blurb says, one day we wake up and the future has disappeared. So begins adult life in Tremaron, a rundown area of Port Louis in Mauritius. But Devi's young protagonists resist this erasure. Boldest among them is Eve, one of the most compelling fictional characters I've ever encountered. She's up there with Ferrante's Lila, and fans of Ferrante's Neapolitan novels will recognize in Devi's account of marginalized urban lives a similar commitment to the truth of how the dispossessed struggle. An extraordinary novel, beautifully translated. If that blurb isn't enough to get you, online it says, Eve Out of Her Ruins is a harrowing account of the violent reality of life in her native country by the figurehead of Mauritian literature. So I can't wait to read this. This has been on my list for so many years. I'm so glad I finally found a copy. The next book I have is actually a nonfiction. It's the only nonfiction on my list, and it is from Fitzcarraldo Editions from Yemen, and it is What Have You Left Behind? If this focuses. There we go. It is What Have You Left Behind by Bersha al-Makhtari. And this is from 2015 to now, I believe. So it says in 2015, a year after it started, Bushra decided to document the suffering of civilians during the Yemeni civil war, which has killed over 350,000 people according to the UN. Inspired by the work of Svetlana Alexievich, she spent 2 years visiting different parts of the country, putting her life at risk by speaking with her compatriots and gathering over 400 testimonies, a selection of which appear in What Have You Left Behind. She highlights the disillusionment and anguish felt by those trapped in a war outside of their own making. As difficult to read as it is to put down, this unvarnished chronicle of the conflict serves as a vital reminder of the scale of the human tragedy behind the headlines and offers a searing condemnation of the international community's complicity in the war's continuation. Something I was really focused on with this TBR was becoming more educated and more aware of the world around me that isn't necessarily on the front pages back home in Canada. I've never read anything from Yemen. I think this is a really significant piece of work that I want to read, and I will try and get to this month. So 2 more books left. This next one is from a country I have read multiple from before, and it's from Turkey, from an author I have read before. This is The Last Apartment in Istanbul. So I have previously read Summer Heat by this author, and forgive me if I pronounce this incorrectly, Daphne Suman. I'm trying to pronounce their names correctly. I absolutely love Summer Heat. I picked up both of these books from Daunt Books in Marylebone. Originally when I picked up Summer Heat, it was on a whim. I saw it on a table. I thought it looked interesting, brought it on my trip, absolutely fell in love with it. And so similarly, 1 year later, when I saw this one on a table at Daunt, I had to pick it up even though it was in my suitcase for over a month and a half and I never read it. I will read it this month. And so this is about a man who has lived in the Circle building for all of his 75 years. From its lofty windows, he has seen Istanbul shift and transform. And as the area has become increasingly gentrified, he's retreated into the apartment's shadowy corners. But when Layla, a sparky 30-something, moves in, he's enthralled, and when he discovers Layla is a writer, he decides to record his own extraordinary story. The oppression and grief, the surprising connections and rediscovered loves of a Greek man living in 20th century Turkey. I'm very intrigued to see where this one goes. I learned a lot from her previous one. I look forward to learning from this one, and I also just really loved her writing, and I wonder if it's the same translator, because I really enjoyed the translation of that other book. So this final book I have on my TBR is actually gifted to me from Pushkin Press. My previous book I read from Pushkin Press was also translated fiction, so I don't know if they always specialize in translated fiction or if that's just what they send me because they know I love it. But this one is from Austria, and it actually comes out in August, and it is called Cooking in the Wrong Century by Teresa Power. First of all, unreal cover. Look at that. So gorgeous. This is a very, very tiny book. And at the top it says, an evening of perfect preparation, a night of uninvited chaos. And so this sounds a bit like a satirical, funny short novel about being the perfect host, prepping for a dinner party, I believe. The premise of this kind of reminds me of, what's that Virginia Woolf one? Miss Dalloway? That's what this is kind of setting up to be, I think. I could be mistaken. Like I said, this is from Austria. For female authors, I've read, where is it? The Wall by Marlene Haushofer. And I've read Stefan Zweig as well from Austria, but I'm excited to read maybe a newer fiction from Austria. So this is translated from German. I don't really read a lot about food. Food is not something I tend to gravitate towards, but this is very short. I love the cover and I'm intrigued, so I would love to get to this month. So those are the 9 books on my TBR for this month. I hope this inspires you to go out and read some women in translation. If I happen to finish these, I would love to get some more either from the library, or I'm sure I have even more on my TBR. I don't even want to look at my physical TBR shelf right now. I will also post a June-July reading recap very shortly, and hopefully some vlogs from my Euro summer everywhere and anywhere. If you have any other videos you'd like to see from me, please let me know. If not, check out my Instagram. That's where you'll find all my book content on a much more regular basis. So it's good to be back. Hope you guys enjoyed the video.